song we gonna do today? What song? Oh yeah, I think that'll work. Yeah, it's kind of like obscure, and not a lot of people know about that one. Yeah, that'll work good.
Camera, camera. I am a camera. Camera, camera. And you may find time will blind you. This to just remind you all is meant to be.
Okay. Let me get my deep voice real quick so I don't sound like a little queer. I beat the Dead Space remake, dude. Wait, no. I need more breath. Oh, yeah, okay. Anyway, I beat the Dead Space remake, and dude, it's kind of mid. Or maybe it was just the original Dead Space is kind of mid. I don't know, man. I had a good time playing it, don't get me wrong. It took a lot of effort to get to run, though. Let's be, honest here. I mean, with the hardware I got, I should be able to run this. Like, I could play the original Dead Space at, 400 frames per second, 1440p, no problem. But in the remake, which is supposed to be just a improvement upon the base game, I have to run it at 1080p, all low settings, in order for me to get 144 frames per second. Are you smoking on my balls here? And on top of that, the aiming feels like ass anyway. And I had to dick around forever with all the different settings. And even if with all that work done, it still sets my CPU to 95 Celsius when I run it for more than an hour or two. That's the breaking point, guys. Anyway. But beyond that, though, the remake, it did a lot of stuff I like. I mean, I love seeing more of Gunner Wright as Isaac. He's phenomenal. And I think remaking the Dead Space 1 story to be more involved with Isaac as a character makes the whole narrative a lot more compelling than the original. But I just think there's a lot of stuff that the remake did that I just didn't really care for. Number one, it was piss easy, okay? Even when he turned up on hard difficulty, it's not like it just became harder. It just kind of felt like more bullshit. Like the encounters didn't become any more difficult. It just became like, oh, I got whipped by an enemy, so now I have next to no health now. Great, moving on. It was just kind of boring. And a lot of the weapons were also kind of broken. The Ripper went from basically the biggest piece of shit in the prior games to now being able to, for most of the early game, and once you get the upgrades in the late game, being able to just stun lock every single opponent you come across, making any individual counter you face just boring. And I'm not sure if this is because I played so much Dead Space now, the horror of the game doesn't work for me, but the big sin on Dead Space Remake is it didn't have much of an atmosphere or tension to it. Because how Dead Space has always worked and why it's a tense and cool game is because, as the main developer, like Glenn Schofield talked about in an interview, what they would do is structure encounters to where enemies come out of vents, right? But the triggers for those vents will be set in a certain way. For example, if you walk down a hallway and at the end of the hallway an enemy pops out of the vent, and then when you back up to get away from that enemy, that triggers the vent behind you to drop an enemy. So that's what Dead Space always had going for it, was that constant tension of opponents coming for your ass from all angles, and any second you're about to get dicked. And in the Dead Space remake, I don't think that ever really happened. I mean, it did happen, but with the overall lighting and how the game was structured, especially, I think that's really what it did, is the lighting of the game was just way too damn bright. Even when I turned the brightness all the way down and I was in completely dark rooms, it never had this atmosphere of me being like, oh, where are they going to come from? Now, maybe that's because they changed the FOV settings on the camera. I don't know what. But the whole thing just came off as very, very, very easy. And if it was an older school game, kind of if it was in the style more so of, let's say, Resident Evil 2 Remake, where fighting enemies is always kind of more so a resource management game and not so much a action-oriented gameplay, then having this gameplay structure where there aren't that many enemies or large-scale encounters where you're just being swarmed on all sides. Because really, unlike in Dead Space 2 or Dead Space 3, this remake, and I'm guessing the original as well, they never really had any encounters until late game where you're actually getting swarmed. And even then, when the swarming encounters happen, it's on when you're on Aegis 7, where the lighting is so bright that you never have any of those tense moments that you had in other games. Some of the most memorable fights I remember in Dead Space 2 was in the government sector. And it was in that sequence, when you're in that room where it's 3 different tiers of rooms, right? And it's in an oval space. And the lighting is kind of dark, and the enemies are popping out on all sides, and they're always coming towards you. And they're enemies that are actually really like aggressive, and they're gonna come and rape your ass. And so you got to be constantly vigilant. And then you move up a few meters, and then they start popping out of the walls again, and then they're coming from behind you. It's really tense and cool, and it adds to the overall horror experience. Because at this point in the game, you're kind of getting attacked on so many sides from so many powerful enemies. You're just losing health very quickly. But that never really happened in this remake. Everything was just kind of a breeze, the whole entire experience was just kind of just I don't know how to describe it, man. I'm not sure if the original was like it, but it didn't have a whole lot of horror to it. So the action elements that it did have were just kind of like, okay, I just walk into this room and there's an enemy there. Okay, now I keep moving. Even like the hunter was cool, but then by the end of the late game, like every time the hunter showed up, I was just like, oh, I better just shoot him 3 times in the leg with a plasma cutter. And now he's completely out of commission. And that was that, And the story, I think, like I said, I liked how they made Isaac an actual real character in the narrative. And I think for that reason, the narrative's a little more compelling. And I haven't really played all of the original Dead Space, but I'm guessing they did something similar here, which is the biggest problem with this game's story, which is how abundantly obvious it is that Nicole is a hallucination. You know what I mean? And once again, I understand that in the narrative of the story that Isaac is being influenced by the marker and he's not going to be able to think clearly. But the whole entire narrative and its whole like how compelling it is as a story, and like what makes it compelling is because the whole entire struggle is supposed to be like you are Isaac, and Isaac is framed in the story as someone who's above everything else. He's in control. He's the one who's smart. He survives everything. And he's not like being screwed over in any way. And this is made even more so if you play the original Dead Spaces, where in Dead Space 2, Isaac is the guy who, in contrast to Strauss, actually knows that the hallucinations he's seeing are fake. So in Dead Space 1, this is what Isaac's character is framed as. And so he's kind of this force for good in the story, and he's trying to keep all these other people from, tearing each other apart, but specifically Hammond and Kendra, and then Kendra with Dr. Klein. And the whole time, he's being framed as this hero, this arbiter, the guy who's going to save his girlfriend and save the team. But then at the end of the game, it's revealed, oh no, he's just as crazy as everybody else. Now watch out for this one. Just pass some gas. But that's like the whole compelling nature of the story, right? Is that we, the audience, are supposed to figure out, just as Isaac figures out that, oh no, he's the one in the wrong here. And yada, yada, yada. And that makes all the other stuff all the more compelling. It makes Kendra's action all the more compelling. But what happens in the narrative is that it's just made so abundantly clear to Isaac through the dialogue of Nicole that she's not the real Nicole. She's fake. And it also takes away from the tragedy at the end of the story. And once again, people say, oh, Dane, you already know the twist. So what if I already know the twist? I can rewatch twists and stories and still enjoy them if they're done proper. But if they're not done properly, in which, it's basically so obvious from the beginning, it's hard to enjoy it. I mean, Nicole is out here in the game basically saying stuff like, make us whole. And I'm like sitting here thinking, dude, you already had every single insane unitologist in the entire game say, make us whole. So why would Nicole suddenly be saying that same thing and in a tone and cadence that makes her sound like an absolute insane person? Come on. She can't escape her fate. No one can. Isaac, you knew this woman for how long? Why in the hell would you think this bitch is normal? But he's insane, Dan. He's like influenced by the marker. I'm like, okay, dude. But we are playing as Isaac, okay? We're viewing the story from his perspective. So if we're viewing it from his perspective and his perspective's telling us this bitch is crazy, and the character we're playing as doesn't think that, it just kind of leads to the big narrative conclusion where it's supposed to be revealed, yeah, the chick you thought was crazy is crazy. She's an hallucination. I can't be sitting here thinking, oh my god. And like, even if they try to pull the shit of being like, it was the hydroponics. How did I forget her name? Not Kendra. What was her name? Mercer? No, that was the bad guy. Damn, I forgot that name's. I forget her name. But the hydroponics gal that is the hallucination of Nicole is taking over to convince Isaac to do shit. that twist doesn't change the whole big problem of me knowing that she's not really there, you know. And the whole narrative is lying on that whole entire twist. And so if the whole thing I see coming a mile away, it just kind of leads to the story being one giant exercise and just like it turns into a chore. And that's what it felt like when I finally got to Aegis 7 in the remake. Is it's like, okay, you already had this big climax, which is Kendra being revealed as a spy, which was done proper in a lot of ways in regards to the story. They hinted at it in just the right ways. For example, when the what's the ship? The ship shows up from the army guys, and she's like, they're probably out on patrol. That's a good foreshadowing and hint for why she would betray him. And it's a good twist, but then after you have this climactic twist, we then go into this low point of like, okay, now I gotta slowly bring the marker to the pedestal, and I know Nicole's an hallucination because obviously, from how she's talking, she's not really there, and she's just crazy. And so now I just gotta slowly get there, and Kendra is back in the narrative. Okay, and now I just gotta fight the boss, and the boss fight is the easiest thing in the world. I can dodge all its attacks by just running from the left to the right. I don't have to. I just have to move to the right, and then move to the left, and then move to the right, and then move to the left, and then I get into the spaceship, and game's over. You know, so it just kind of dragged itself out towards the tail end there. And the economy felt really fucked up. I mean, I was playing on hard, and I was able to just buy 180 plasma cells, no problem. You know? And the balance was also just kind of goofy. Some guns were made really good, like balanced fine. For example, the flamethrower no longer sucks balls, and the Ripper also no longer sucks balls, but it's actually too good. And other weapons are just kind of like, eh. I mean, the gravitational pull on the force gun is like, who cares? I mean, the original like beam effect was actually like kind of useful, whereas this is just like, who gives a fuck? The pulse rifle lost all of its major damage. It could still be good if you upgrade it. I don't know. I didn't really use it all that much to really give it a good gauge. And the line gun has an awesome alt fire, but not really. What am I talking about? The alt fire on the line gun's cool because you can put it on items and then to kinesis those items into the air to basically turn your hand to a death laser. And it's pretty balanced because you got to find an object in the environment that can actually do that, and then you also have to you only have a limited amount of time of the beam running before it goes out. So it's pretty balanced, but beyond that usefulness, the weapon's utterly useless. I mean, a shot from the line gun barely does more damage than a single plasma round from the plasma cutter. Like, what the fuck? And then the alt fire, when you line it up on the ground, enemies only touch the thing for a few seconds. So like, what? How is this thing useful to me? You know? And what's the last gun? Oh, the contact beam. I didn't really have much use for. I didn't find it all that amazing. But yeah, so I mean, and the plasma cutter is amazing. It's almost a little bit too good because for some reason the final upgrade on the plasma cutter allows it to just knock down all the enemies in front of you, basically making it so that you don't even have to use the force gun for its main purpose of knocking enemies away from you anymore. And I do like how they improved the upgrade system in the remake. That's pretty good. Because the original, I think power nodes were just so few and far between. It was just the biggest pain in the ass. You know, and that's why Dead Space 3 threw the power node model out the window and instead focused on more finding upgrade parts throughout the world to configure your gun the way you want. But I honestly, I think this system's way better of like finding power nodes, and every single power node upgrade gives you something out of it. And there's just being more in the world, so you actually can choose different guns and stuff that you want. But yeah, you know, I mean, it was a good time. I enjoyed my time with the remake, but I don't know. I was just I was looking for a little bit more combat and action or a little bit better horror, and I didn't really get either of those things in comparison to the other games in the series. So I don't know. I think I can understand why EA didn't shut the thing down and didn't sell that well, because it's like, oh wow, hey, I got a really beautiful looking Dead Space 1 that runs like shit. And is like, I guess, just taking mechanics from Dead Space 2 and throwing it into Dead Space 1 with the same exact pacing and style, with some minor story improvements and regressions. So it's kind of like, it just kind of leaves you wondering, like, was this really worth it? I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm probably gonna go through and do Dead Space 2 playthrough one more time, and then another Dead Space 3 playthrough, and then I'll go back and I'll replay the original, but I probably won't do that because I'm probably getting bored. I kind of want to get back to playing Ghost Recon Wildlands. I love that game to death with the first person mod and a proper reshade. I mean, it turns into the most immersive first-person shooter ever. But yeah, that's a little long of a ramble. See ya. Now that's embarrassing. I pressed the button to end and it didn't. So now you're just gonna see this last little segment of me